What is going on, guys? DragonTamerBlayde here, back with some more Isle of Madness card reviews. It is the day before Isle of Madness. It comes out tomorrow. So this will be the second to last review. I think we're sitting at... How many cards are we sitting at? I think we're at like 30-something out of 55 cards revealed or so. I don't know the exact number off the top of my head. So we're going to review another, I think, 8 cards I have on deck for today. Oh, here it is. We've seen 47 out of 55. So we've got like 8 more cards to cover. So we're going to cover... 8 cards today, and then when Isle of Madness releases tomorrow, we'll review the final 8 cards, and I'll give my thoughts on the set as a whole, and then we'll have the upload of the playthrough and the Master Mode playthrough. You guys know how we do it here. But just wanted to let you guys know we're going to do one more pre-release review today, and then tomorrow we will review everything that is left over. So, we've gotten 5 videos in. This is number 6 of giving my thoughts, giving a star rating. We've already done all that, and we're going to continue. Without further ado, let's get on into it. First up, we've got Haskill, a 4-cost 3/5 Breton. At the end of your turn, Haskill chooses a cost. When you play a card with the chosen cost, draw a card, then Haskill chooses a new cost. So while I think this is a nifty ability, I don't think it's particularly powerful. It relies on you having a variety of different card costs in your hand. So I think something like probably a mid-range deck could probably make use of this card the best, or maybe as a control deck to draw some more cards. I don't know. But something with a diverse Magicka number, since it's not like you can roll 0 on Haskill and just play 10 0-cost cards and draw 10 cards, because the effect says after you play a card and draw a card, he chooses a new cost. So you have to have a diverse number of creatures in your hand, or number of cards in your hand with different costs, to really get a ton of value out of this card. But even if you're drawing 1 card per turn, it's not horrible value, especially because it's a solid body for the cost. A 3/5 isn't horrible. It's obviously a defensive body for 4, but it's still not too bad. So even if you can like trigger this guy once, maybe twice, I think it's pretty decent. The only problem is being able to trigger him is largely RNG dependent. So while I don't think this card is quite horrible, the RNG component of it, I think, will prevent it from being as good as it possibly could be, which I also think is good because it's a neutral card, and I don't want neutral draw to be too good. We already have Namira's Shrine, which is crazy, crazy good, and Altar of Despair, which while it isn't directly draw, it's value generation. And those two with Ulfric's Uprising and Teles's Conscription is enough powerhouses in neutral. So I like Haskill. I think he's nifty. I think you could probably get decent use out of him in Arena. I think certain decks may be able to experiment with him for drawing cards. Mono Neutral is going to like him as card draw, I think. Probably in the top 3 to 5 cards for Mono Neutral to draw, besides like Mechanical Ally and stuff like that being the best. I think this is a fun card, not super powerful. I'd give this card like a 3 stars for the body, maybe 2.5 stars, but 3 stars for the body and Arena application. I don't think this card will see a ton of play in constructed, although I like the ability. Next up, we have Seducer Dark Fire. Kind of a similar line of thinking of Haskill. 7-cost, 7/7 Daedra. Summon, choose a cost. Your opponent can't play cards with the chosen cost. This card is pretty crazy. I'm pretty sure, and we have to get this confirmed, but I'm pretty sure that this effect goes away when Seducer Dark Fire dies. If it doesn't, this card becomes absolutely insane and probably a 5-star card. But I'm going to review it under the assumption that whatever cost you choose, your opponent can play again once this card dies. So I've seen other people talk about this, and this is where I thought first as well. Seeing this card, a couple of these cards with like Doppelganger and Ulfric's Uprising to try and lock your opponent out of playing like anything. While that's obviously a very meme application, I think that would be hilarious to see happen. I would be all there for it. Even just shutting down a couple different Magicka costs could be crazy, especially if you know what your opponent's playing. Like if I recognize you as like that Ramp Warrior Slay deck, I may just choose 9 right off the bat so that you can't play your Night Talon Lord or Blood Magic Lord. So there's some level of skill to this card in identifying what cards your opponent is most likely running, as well as which ones you need to shut down in order to better push your advantage or swing the game in your favor. And I like that because it's not just like a random cost your opponent can't play. There is a skill aspect to it. I think this card would be extra awesome if it had guard, although it'd probably be pushing a 5-star card if it had guard as well. A 7/7 guard that shuts something down is pretty crazy as well. But I still think this card is really good. It obviously depends on the meta, but if you put this into like a control deck that can survive aggro pretty well, and you know your opponent's conscription is coming or something like that in the late game, and you can identify the deck properly and shut that card down, it gives you time to do your other crazy things. I actually think this card is like a 4.5 possibly star card. Maybe on the 4-star side of things, but it's definitely in that 4 to 4.5 ballpark. I think this card is almost good enough to make traditional control decks like a thing again, just because of this being able to shut down some of the things that control struggles to deal with. We may still wind up in a meta where this is possibly too slow to get value out of, but if the rest of your deck is tuned for like an anti-aggro type of thing besides your control late game, I don't think this hurts you that much against aggro to have in your deck. And even if like I'm playing aggro warrior and I've like mostly stabilized, you can still get value out of this card by dropping it down and choosing 5 so your opponent can't play Wood Orc Headhunter, Sower of Revenge, or Underworld Vigilante. And that's 3 of their key quote-unquote closers from aggro warrior that you're shutting down depending on which ones your opponent chooses to run. So I think this card's probably like a 4.5 star card. It's definitely one of the best cards that's been revealed so far in my opinion. Next up, we've got one of, if not my favorite card from the set. It's definitely up there. Doomfang Ally. 3-cost, 3/3 neutral card. Summon effect. If the top card of your deck is red, gain +2/+2, blue, gain ward, yellow, gain drain, green, gain lethal, or purple, gain +0/+2. And yes, these effects do stack if the top card of your deck is a dual or tricolor card. So for 3 Magicka, if, for example, you're playing something like Dagoth, you get a 5/3 with ward and lethal. Or, just going through all the examples, if you're playing Telvanni, you get ward, lethal, 3/5. Pretty crazy. Almost all combinations of these cards are great for tricolor. Even dual colors are pretty amazing. If you're playing Mage, a 3-cost 3/3 with ward and drain, I think is a really great 3-drop. I saw Charmer say, I think, that if you could hit some Mage stuff, this is arguably better than Daggerfall Mage, and I'm in agreement with that. I would say even if you just hit ward and had a 3/3 for 3 with ward, Windkeep Spellsword sees a lot of play, and he's a 2/2 for 2 with ward. And this being a 3/3 for 3 with ward that can't be executed or Grizzly Gourmet, I think makes this card pretty solid. Honestly, there's almost every keyword here makes this card solid. A 3-cost 3/5 is still overstated for the cost. 3-cost 5/3 still overstated for the cost. I think arguably the worst one it could draw is Drain or Lethal, and even those 2 keywords are really powerful. I think the worst case scenario is if you're running 3 of these in your deck and you hit another Doomfang Ally. I think that's the only way this card is bad. I think this card is pretty solid in almost all decks. I think this is like a mid-range king card. It's kind of one of those cards that's going to make mid-range come back. I could see aggro decks running this, like a Battle Mage deck that can pull a potential 5/3 with ward. Even I think aggro Battle Mage would consider running that, just because it's sticky and has high attack. I think the card's really good. I think this is a solid 4-star card. I think this is the kind of card that mid-range decks need to kind of push against our Conscription Menace. I like this card a lot. I can't wait to play with this card in a lot of different decks. Next up, we've got Shining Saint. This was revealed by Geeka Forta, I believe. I like this card a lot too. 2-cost 2/2 Daedra. Summon, give a creature -2/-0 this turn, and it loses cover. So there's a couple things that I think are key with this card. One, the -2/-0 is not irrelevant. It's actually huge, especially on turn 2 or 3, when this card is at its best. You're fighting for the board early as some sort of mid-rangey or even a control deck. Being able to set an opponent's creature's attack down to 0 or 1 and trade favorably into it that early really gives you a huge advantage on the board early. And this is the kind of thing that can kind of snowball out of control if you hit one of these at the proper time. In addition, the fact that it also loses cover in addition to reducing the attack If your opponent tried to hide a lethal creature in the shadow lane against some creature you have, you can remove that cover, drop the attack, and trade into that lethal creature and kill it before it gets any value on your creatures. I think this card is absolutely nuts. I like it a lot. It kind of continues a tradition of 2-drops being some of the best cards in Legends. I'm going to give this card 4 stars as well. I think this card is crazy. I think this card is almost strictly better than, what's it called? The Gavel of the Ordinator. There are obviously some times where Gavel is better, but I think almost a strong percentage, if not all of the time, I'd rather have Shining Saint from the body and the types of decks that can really take advantage of that swing. I like this card so much. I think this is, it's up there in the set. I wouldn't quite go 4.5 or 5 stars, but I think this card is incredibly powerful. Next up, we have, this was revealed by, who was this revealed by? I think this was Warriors71. An-Xileel Rootbender, 5-cost 5/4 Spriggan. When an action targets this card, draw a card. Depending on the definition of target, I think this card can be really, really good for you. Something like in a Battle Mage deck where you rapid shot this card, you would pay 1 Magicka and a card to draw 2 cards. It's obviously fantastic. In an Assassin deck, if you Shadow Shift, you're drawing 2 cards. There's just a lot of different ways to get value out of this card. Even Dark Rebirth can potentially draw you a card. It's a Spriggan, so it can get powered up if Spriggan Assassin is ever a thing. You can play the Elder Gleam Matron. No, not Elder Gleam Matron. Whatever that card is. The 7-cost 5/5 that gives +2/+2 to Spriggans and animals obviously synergizes with this card, but just the drawing I think is solid. Obviously the stats are a little bit low for a 5-drop, but the fact that it has 5 attack means it's still trading into a lot, if not everything, in the 5 to 6 Magicka range. And the most common ways that you're going to kill this creature on turn 4 or 5, if not through creature combat, is through Javelin or Lightning Bolt, in which case, yeah, you lost a creature and a card, but your opponent spent one of their prime pieces of removal killing your creature, so you 1-for-1 on that front, and then you also get a card out of it, so you're actually coming out of that exchange +1. So any slower deck you're playing against that relies on having those pieces of removal in order to kind of run you out of resources, if they have to Lightning Bolt or Javelin this card, especially if you buff it so that it becomes more of a target, it replaces itself in a lot of cases, and even if it just dies to creature combat, it's still traded in the end. So I think this card is really, really solid. The health may wind up being a weakness over time, but I'm not the type that just instantly crosses cards off if they're weak to Lightning Bolt. In fact, I think this card being weak to Lightning Bolt can sometimes act as a strength. I'd give this card like 3.5 stars. I think it's really solid and it's going to fit into some decks. Not everything, but I think there's going to be a solid amount of decks that run this card. Next up, we've got a unique legendary orc from Asami Dwarven Ale. We've got Luzrah, gro-Char. 2-cost, 2/3 orc. When you summon a creature with 6 cost or more, both Luzrah and that creature gain +2/+2. So obviously this card wants to kind of snowball itself out over time, but I think the biggest value is going to be in some of those late game bombs. So something like Tazcad coming down as an 8/8, or Aspect of Racine coming down as an 8/8, both with charge, I think is amazing, and you can play both of these cards together on turn 11 or 12. This card coming down with Swiftwing Dragon for 7 is solid. Honestly, I think this card even makes Odoneran Necromancer even better, since this would trigger on the Necromancer on summon. So Necromancer would become a 5/5, thus letting him pull anything in your discard pile with 4 or less attack moving down. So that's crazy. You could do Necromancer Chains to pull back multiple Necromancer, or any number of awesome combos with Odoneran Necromancer I think is awesome. I'm sure there's other awesome combos with this card that I'm not even thinking of. I think this is a really solid card. A little bit limited by the fact that you have to summon a 6-cost card with it. So you probably want to hang on to this card for the most part, unless you drop it as a fine statted 2-cost and hope that it survives until turn 5 or 6. I don't think you can always do that. So I think if you want to get true value out of this card or set up combo plays with it, you have to hang on to this card until turn 5 or 6. Actually even after that, you have to hang on to this card until turn like 7 or 8. and having to hang on to a 2-drop until that late can bring down the power level a little bit, but I still think that this card is going to have enough synergies and combos to make it worthwhile in a fair amount of decks. And the fact that it's a 2-cost 2/3 means that even if you're forced into playing this card, the stats are good enough to where it can probably get by. For that reason, I'd give this card like a 3-ish stars. Just the fact that it makes Odurna and Necromancer better means the power level of this card is pretty high because of how common Necromancer is to see. Next up, we've got Mad Dash to reveal. 2-cost action. Move a friendly creature and then give it +1/+1 for each enemy creature in its lane. So in like an aggro race, this card is ridiculous because usually in an aggro race, you and your opponent are going to stack different lanes, and if you move a friendly creature into that lane, it's getting +4/+4 after it moves, and that's not counting if you have like the 3/1 smuggler guy that gives +1/+1 when you move, or like a caravan enforcer that already gains +1/+1 whenever it moves. I think this card is really, really good. It throws off your opponent's plan. So if they were putting, I don't know, if I have a 3/3 on board swinging in the right lane, and your opponent plays like a 3/4 in the left lane, trying to, I guess, pseudo race or just play something outside of range of my creature, not only can I move into the other lane to do battle with the opponent's creature, but I'm also getting a buff that can make me trade favorably and kind of throw out my opponent's plans. I think this is actually a really strong action. It works around lane stacking, kind of can punish your opponent for lane stacking, as well as reward you for moving into that lane and trying to contest those creatures, if not race them dead ahead and giving your opponent a chance to answer it. I think we're going to see a lot of this action, especially in more aggressive decks. Even just moving away from a guard. Like, if the value you get out of Mad Dash is it being a worse Shadow Shift, I still think that is decent enough times in an aggro deck that this card could be worth it. Like, if your opponent has nothing on board besides one guard, and all you do is move your creature out of the way of the guard, that can be enough to win some games. And the fact that any other creatures makes this card better and better makes up for the fact that it's not going to draw you an extra card. And it's going to get that extra attack off. I would give this card like 3.5 stars. I think this card is really, really, really good. Okay, and then the final card we're going to review today before we talk about the expansion as a whole tomorrow is Gardener's Harvest, revealed by Dust. It's a 1-cost item that gives +1/+1 if you equip it, or at the end of your turn, if this card is in your hand, it changes into a random item and keeps its ability, which means until you equip this onto something, every turn it'll turn into a new random item at the end of your turn. So, what do I think about that? I think it's pretty solid. It allows you to kind of fish for a high roll without having to run other items in your deck. So what I mean by that is, depending on the game state, a different item could be the best item for your situation. So whereas one game U-Shield or Legion Shield or something like that might be your best option in order to stifle an opposing aggro deck, a different game, the Battle Mace could be your best option, or the Orcish Warhammer could be your best option. And this card gives you access to all of those cards at the payment or the cost of RNG and having to hope you find the right one. I don't know if I would pack my deck full of these, but I would probably consider running 1 or 2 just because of how often a random item can be powerful. In addition, something to keep in mind is Unite the Houses decks. Any random item means that it can pull any color item. Any color item means when you play it on the board, items do count for Unite the Houses. So there are potential for like crazy Unite the Houses Battle Mage or even Dagoth or something like that can fish these cards with like Forsworn Looter, since they only cost 1 and Forsworn Looter has 1 attack, and you could potentially just try and high roll your opponent to a Unite the Houses win using Gardener's Harvest. I think Unite the Houses is, I've been saying it for a while, it's teetering on the brink of becoming a problem. It's still probably meme tier, but Gardener's Harvest, I think, can go a huge way into making Unite the Houses like a real problem and a real thing. And I think actually, just purely off of the power of Unite and how often a random item can be good, I would give this card like 3.5 stars. Random items, obviously you don't want to rely on them, but you can almost always get value out of items over the course of the game, and Unite the Houses becoming more consistent is terrifying. Yeah, this card's still random, but it's guaranteed to always be different. So like normally with Unite, you generate a random card. If it's the wrong color, oh well, you have to wait until your next generate. This card does it every single turn. Obviously you have to play it that turn if you want to use it, but this card is really, really scary. I think this card could be part of Unite the Houses becoming a problem at some point soon. But yeah, that is going to be it for now, guys. I am so hyped for Isle of Madness to come out tomorrow. I will be streaming my playthrough of the game, so hopefully you guys come hang out on Twitch. But yeah, let me know what you guys think down below in the comment section of these cards. What would you rate these cards using our star scale? And yeah, we'll see you guys tomorrow in a new Age of Legends. I am so excited. Thank you guys all very much for watching, and I'll see you guys next time. Peace.